So without waiting too long, we're going to start. So this presentation is using PowerPoint. So there's going to be videos, pictures, images, and conversations. So I would like everyone, if you have any question, you can use the button to raise your hand, and I can give you you can actually speak. I will do a break in about an hour and a half to have like a moment where we can ask questions in a special, and I'd like to have a kind of interaction just to allow people to digest the information and the ideas and share it with everyone, so everyone can hold into it and eventually like answer some questions. Yeah, so if you could use like microphones, that would be easier for you because you could hear better, and earphones, so that will give you a better experience. And yeah, so here we go. Can you all see the screen? Yep. So I ask most of you to print this this image, so you can have it in your place and you can easily like focus on it. So this is a symbol that I discovered. Thanks, Nick. This is a symbol that I discovered 4 years ago, and in my knowledge, I never saw this anywhere else in the world. So that's something that will that I will explain you in a few course, not today. So the only thing that I will ask you today is just to tune on it, just to look at it, and just let the energy of the symbolism like comes into your psyche. And it would be great over the next few days if you could look at it once or twice a day, like when you wake up in the morning, just tune on it, and like don't try to understand it, don't try to like bring sense from it. It will make sense in a few weeks, but right now, like just let it sit and let immerse yourself into it. It's a very powerful symbol that have a lot of properties, and we're going to talk about it later. So if you want to find the secret of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. This is our dear Nikola Tesla. So just a second, I'm going to stop this and start it again. There's something weird happening on my screen. There we go. Unfortunately, there's 3 people who couldn't make it tonight, so next week there's going to be even more people. Woohoo! Alrighty, so I'm just going to ask you to have a quick meditation, just a 2 minutes meditation, just to focus on this presentation. It's a video from the template ceremony. It just allow you to be in that good space, and if you could like close your eyes or watch it, like it's up to you, and just connect to it and connect with every people who are online now. You heard their voice, you hear their face, you saw their face, so just connect to them.
As we enter the field of alchemical ceremony, we begin at the beginning, identifying our human quintessence as a fractal aspect of source consciousness. As the great Mahagaya Tantra of creation differentiates from the monad in order to enjoy relationship, prime consciousness becomes inconceivably, simultaneously one and different. Source awareness coalesces into the unborn, eternal, sovereign soul identity that lies at the heart of the human masterpiece. The tantric alchemy of the life impulse enters the biosphere of Earth, blossoming into ever denser fields of matter, crystallizing consciousness into form. Through the portal created by the tantric union of man and woman, as the mother form rises to meet the father consciousness, the soul covenant, written in the geometric language of light, is energetically activated. The human light body matrix enters the conceptual world. In the womb of woman, life begins. In the rich red, warm darkness is felt the first element, water. Through the initiation of birth comes the second element, air. As the first breath, the sacred vow between spirit and matter, the bridge to life, is given and taken. The first independent breath activates the individual electromagnetic field of circuitry. Simultaneously, the geometric soul covenant is encoded by the geomagnetic field of Earth and her solar system, astrologically imprinting the human matrix. The third element of Earth activates the senses. As the Earth circles the Sun, waves of time and light inform the biosignaling systems of the human hologram. The divine human propensity as a universal progenitor of life is synergized. The fourth element of fire is fanned by desire. As the orgasmic synergy of the full spectrum of the chakras translates the divinity of life into an ecstatic experience, the physical body is known as the pinnacle of the manifestation of the spiritual identity. The radiance of the fifth element of ether becomes a coherent point of reference.
All right. Who is familiar with the template work? Who has been to the website before? Okay, so keep in mind, like the templateorg.com. It's a beautiful website. So, right, so a little bit about myself. So who am I? Who is Roman? So the official CV is a degree in psychology, degree in musicology, master in law, master in international relationship, expert in renewable energy and interior designer. And the unofficial CV is a free energy researcher, UN Susindo diplomat, artist, musician, quantum medicine practitioner, non-governmental organization, private foundation advisor, and sacred arithmetic teacher, and a very happy daddy. All right, so what the occult knowledge really mean? No one's left. All right, so please attach your seatbelt. We're about to take off. So we're going to start with the teachability. So the teachability is the ability that we all have to respond to knowledge and the connection that we can all have with knowledge. So the way that it works, can you all see the mouth on the screen? Can you see my mouth? Yeah? Okay. So this is the teachability index. So you don't want to be here. You don't want to be in the arrogant, cynical, skeptical space. You don't want to be in the naive, gullible, trusting space. You want to be in the center. You want to be like between the teacher and the student. Like you always oscillate. One day you will teach, the other day you will learn, and that's who I am. That's anything that we can expect. No one can be only a teacher, only a student, because yeah, it's not a sustainable system. Teacher will fit with what they know, and student will never master anything that they know. So yeah, so how much do I learn? The best position team is between the healthy skeptical and the firm trusting. Okay. So teachability, an individual's teachability, or the ability to learn by way of being taught by someone else, is extremely dependent upon the open-mindedness or closed-mindedness of the individual being taught. Low teachability derived from arrogance and rigid skepticism, but also from naivete and gullibility. And high teachability derived from the balance between healthy skepticism and an open-minded willingness to learn and change. Human beings should consider with great care their source of information. By refusing to present certain information and by influencing people to dismiss certain information as unimportant or unnecessary to consider, many modern institutions seek to control human perception and therefore to limit what human beings may come to understand. So who is familiar with the concept of nescience? I'm sure a lot of people knows what is ignorance, but who knows what is nescience? So nescience versus ignorance, the context of not knowing. So nescience is coming from the Latin verb nescire, to not know because knowledge was absent or unattainable. Okay, so you couldn't know it even if you wanted to know it. Versus ignorance, which come from the Latin verb ignorare, to not know even though necessary information is present because that information has been willfully refused or disregarded. Okay, so this is a very important subject because we are surrounded by a lot of ignorance. A lot of people deliberately refuse to look at information and grow. But we also are facing a big aspect of the nescience where the knowledge has been actually hidden from us. So the occult knowledge is based on this pyramid here. So at the top of the pyramid, you have the hidden knowledge held by the few, the elite, the religious, the religion, and a lot of secret society. And at the bottom of the pyramid, you have the ignorance of the mass. The word occult is derived from the Latin adjective occultus, which means hidden, which comes from the Latin verb occultare, to hide, to conceal, to keep secret. So it's a knowledge that was there, but has been hidden. If you look at the word occult, so you have the notion of cult, of course, but you have the OC before, which is a reference to the astrologic connection. The O symbolizes the sun, because it's the sphere, and the C symbolizes the moon, which is the crescent. Okay, so it's the cult of the sun and the moon, which is a reference to the Hermetic principles, the Hermetic knowledge, which is this underlying truth that is in everything that is, but has been kept hidden and replaced by a fake way to look at reality. So occult knowledge constitutes both the knowledge of human consciousness and how it operates, and the natural knowledge of natural law, the unseen universal spiritual laws which govern the consequences of human behavior. And this is the hidden knowledge that I'm going to share with you. The knowledge of natural law and its operation constitute the most deployed occulted information on earth, which the powers that be seek to keep hidden from the people of earth at all costs, because its understanding would level the playing field and put an end to the currently entrenched system of control. Apocalypse comes from the word, the Greek prefix apo, away from, and removed from, and the Greek verb kaleptein, to cover, to conceal. Hence, apocalypse literally means to reveal or take out of hiding, so revealing information. And this is why they always was afraid of the apocalypse, because this is the moment where they lose the control of the machine. So why is Hermetic knowledge is so important? What are the rules of this reality? Can we only refer to physics and science to define it, knowing that both of them come from a methodology in which it's only because you can repeat an experience enough time that you can conclude that something is true, which doesn't always true, but you have a good chance that it could be. So the perception of reality through the scientific perception is incomplete, everyone knows it, but this is right now the best that we can expect. So we're going to see if we can find a better way. What the ancient civilization knew, what are we? We all. What is the different segments of our own existence? How can we take control of our reality? What do we know about magic, alchemy, divination, astrology, astronomy, tarot games? What do we know about proportion, distance, colors, spectrum, entities, dimension, levels? Like, what is clear? What can we trust? Who is Thoth, Hermes, Mercury?
Who really was Thoth the Atlantean? First off, before we go deep down the rabbit hole, you need to know that Thoth went by many other names, depending on the part of the world, what time, and what culture you were in. The Greeks called him Hermes Trismegistus. We'll talk more about that name later. The Romans referred to him as Mercury. In South American cultures, such as the Mayans, he was known as Quetzalcoatl, and in the Old Testament Bible, he was known as Enoch, but for the majority of this video, I will refer to him as Thoth. How was it that Thoth was so well known in every major culture from all around the world, spanning over thousands of generations? Thoth had conquered death. He could sustain his body indefinitely. He was a scientist and geneticist who played a significant role in the creation of humankind. He had mastered the technology of incarnating his consciousness into new avatars. Earlier, I mentioned Thoth was known as Hermes Trismegistus, which in Greek translates to the thrice great, or 3 times great. I have also seen it translated into the thrice born, or 3 times born. Does this mean actually born out of a womb 3 times, or is it possible he had incarnated more than once and understood how to incarnate without losing his memory? We will talk more about this later. Thoth was a master of alchemy, energy, and frequency, an out-of-body traveler, and consciousness coach for humanity, you might say. Thoth ruled the ancient Egyptian race for 16,000 years, from 50,000 BC to 36,000 BC, and he raised his followers to a very high level of consciousness. Thoth was often depicted in ancient Egyptian culture with the head of a bird. He erected the Great Pyramid of Giza shortly before he left, and appointed guards to keep his secrets. Later on, the descendants of these guards became the pyramid priests. Thoth is often depicted holding a winged staff with two snakes coiled around it. This is known as the caduceus, aka the rod of Hermes. The two snakes are said to be symbolic for the double helix DNA strand, and also a representation of the Kundalini energy said to be released when activating all 7 energy chakras in the human body. See my other video about the 7 human energy centers. Thoth was the builder of the Egyptian pyramids at Giza and most likely heavily involved with the construction of many megalithic sites across the globe, as well as involved in launching entire civilizations altogether, including the lost city of Atlantis and ancient Egypt. A direct descendant of the royal Anunnaki bloodline and said to be the author of over 30,000 books, many of which were probably lost, stolen, and destroyed over the years. Of these books, the famous Emerald Tablets of Thoth have been recently recovered and translated by Doriel of the Brotherhood of the White Temple. According to Doriel, as to the material of the Emerald Tablets, they are imperishable, resistant to all elements and substance. In effect, the atomic and cellular structure is fixed, no change ever taking place. In this respect, they violate the material law of ionization. Upon them are engraved characters in the ancient Atlantean language, characters which respond to attuned thought waves, releasing the associated mental vibration in the mind of the reader. The tablets are fastened together with hoops of golden-colored alloy suspended from a rod of the same material. So much for the material appearance. The wisdom contained therein is the foundation of the ancient mysteries, and for the ones who read it with open eyes and mind, his wisdom shall be increased 100-fold. Read, believe or not, but read, and the vibration found therein will awaken a response in your soul.
Who have ever read the Emerald Tablet before? You can raise your hand. Robin, Io, and PJ. Okay. And Chloe. Ah, here we go. All right. So yeah, for those of you who haven't read it yet, it's the kind of book that even if you don't understand what he's talking about, if you don't understand the concept or everything that is announced, it will still do its work. It will still penetrate your psyche and transform you from inside. All truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it's violently opposed. And third, it's accepted as being self-evident. So we're going to talk today about the 7 Hermetic principles. So the 7 Hermetic principles have been announced in a book called the Kybalion, Kybalion, the Kybalion. It's a book that has been written in the early 1905. And it's a book that you can easily find online, or I can share it on the page if you want to read it. It's something that needs to be read many times again to be able to understand it. And it's going to be the main road that we're going to go through over the next 6 weeks as an introduction to this universe. So the word principles come from the Latin principia, first, foremost, leading, chief, most necessary, that which is the most important. So principles is that which is the most important. When you ask today to people what is important in their life, they will most of the time speak about their family, their children, their friends, their job. Principles used to be what is the most important. And this is why honor, love, charity, solidarity was before the value that was put in place before speaking about your own interest. So the general principle of natural law, the natural law is expressed through 7 basic underlying principles plus an 8th principle which bind the other 7 together. This principle constitutes a master key through which universal wisdom, including the knowledge of the requirement to obtaining what we desire, is unveiled and de-occulted. So those 7 principles are principle of mentalism, principle of correspondence, principle of vibration, principle of polarity, principle of rhythm, principle of cause and effect, principle of gender, and the 8th one will be seen after. So we're going to go through all of them, and today we're going to do mentalism and correspondence. Is it okay? Anyone have a question so far? Good. So first principle of mentalism. So the principle of mentalism stands that the all is mind. So the definition of the all is the other aspect of God. God is a personification of the all. The all just simply define everything that is. Okay, so the all, it will always be referred at the all. The all is mind. The universe is mental. Thoughts led to the manifestation of things and events. Thoughts create our state of existence and the quality of our experience here on earth. Therefore, be responsible for everything you create by being responsible for everything that you think. So I think we have something like 3 hypnotherapists tonight, and I know that all of them are using the mind and the thoughts to actually change past events or present events. And we're going to understand now why.
The 7 Hermetic Principles. 1. The Principle of Mentalism. The all is mind, the universe is mental. The Kabbalion. This principle embodies the truth that all is mind. It explains that the all, which is the sustainable reality underlying the outward manifestations and appearances which we know under the terms of the material universe, the phenomena of life, matter, energy, and in short, all that is apparent to our material senses, is spirit, in which itself is unknowable and undefinable, but which may be considered and thought of as a universal, infinite living mind. It also explains that all the phenomenal world or universe is simply a mental creation of the all, subject to the laws of created things, and that the universe as a whole, and in its parts or units, has its existence in the mind of the all, in which mind we live and move and have our being. This principle, by establishing the mental nature of the universe, easily explains all of the varied mental and psychic phenomena that occupy such a large portion of the public attention, and which, without such explanation, are non-understandable and defy scientific treatment. An understanding of this great Hermetic principle of mentalism enables the individual to readily grasp the laws of the mental universe and to apply the same to his well-being and advancement. The Hermetic student is enabled to apply intelligently the great mental laws instead of using them in a haphazard manner. With Tyre Master Key in his possession, the student may unlock the many doors of the mental and psychic temple of knowledge and enter the same freely and intelligently. This principle explains the true nature of energy, power, and matter, and why and how all these are subordinate to the mastery of mind. One of the old Hermetic masters wrote, long ages ago, "He who grasps the truth of the mental nature of the universe is well advanced on the path to mastery." And these words are as true as today as at the time they were first written. Without this master key, mastery is impossible, and the student knocks in vain at the many doors of the temple.
So the principle of mentalism, this principle embodies the truth that all is mind. It explained that the all, which is the substantial reality underlying all the outward manifestation and appearance, which we know under the term of material universe, phenomena of life, matter, energy, and all that is apparent to our material senses, is spirit, which in itself is unknowable and definable, but which may be considered as and thought as an universal, infinite, and living mind. It is also referred as the absolute or fullness. This principle also explains that all the phenomenal world or universe is simply a mental creation of the all, subject to the laws of created things, and that the universe as a whole and in its part or units as its existence in the mind of the all, in which mind we live and move and have our being. So let's start with the definition of what is reality. So reality in the scientific definition of matter, in the classical physics observed in everyday life, if something has a mass and takes up space, it is said to be composed of matter. This includes atoms and those molecules and anything made up of these, but no other energy phenomena or wave, such as light or sound. So if something has a mass and takes up space, include atom molecules and anything that made of these. Mind is indeed the builder. What is held in the act of mental vision becomes a reality in the material experience. We are gradually builded to that image created within our own mental being. Okay, matter is usually classified into 4 classical states. The first one is solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. The Hermetic doctrine, which preceded our modern science by eons, used to define reality as solid for earth, water liquid, air is a gas, and fire is a plasmatic state. And the 5th element used to be defined as the combination of the 4 others, which is the etheric element. So ether could also be defined in our modern terms as vacuum. A vacuum is a space that is devoid of matter. It's a free space. And therefore, this is where the entirety of matter can come from. So where can we find the state of vacuum in our reality? Where the vacuum is in this reality?
We were all taught in school that the world is made of stuff, of matter, of mass, of atoms. Atoms make up molecules, molecules make up materials, and everything is made of that. But atoms actually are mostly empty. For example, if this ball were the nucleus of an atom, a proton and a hydrogen atom, for example, then the electron circling this, which would describe the outer limits of that atom, would be out by that mountain over there, roughly 20 miles away. And everything in between is empty. In fact, the universe is mostly empty. However, when we go down in scale, in the emptiness, we eventually come to a level, the fundamental level of space-time geometry, the fine basement level of the universe, where there's information, there's a pattern. It's called the Planck scale, and it's the fabric of the universe. And at that level, there's information that's been there since the Big Bang. So most of the universe, even of matter, is actually empty.
Most people think that the vacuum is empty. But for internal consistency of quantum mechanics and relativity theory, there is required to be the equivalent of 10 to the 94 grams of mass energy, each gram being E equals mc squared kind of energy. Now that's a huge number, but what does it mean practically? Practically, if I can assume that the universe is flat, and more astronomical data is showing it's pretty darn flat. If I can assume that, then if I take the volume or take the vacuum within a single hydrogen atom, that's about 10 to the minus 23 cubic centimeters. If I take that amount of vacuum and I take the latent energy in that, there is 1 trillion times more energy there than in all of the mass of all of the stars and all of the planets out to 20 billion light years. That's big. That's big. And if consciousness allows you to control even a small fraction of that, creating a Big Bang is no problem.
Organizations like NASA, British Aerospace, are all trying to tap into this incredible, unimaginably large energy sea. And they feel if they can tap this, we can travel to different galaxies. So they understand that in empty space, there is this unbelievable energy.
The major basic idea that quantum physics implies, which makes us understand this or even think about this new paradigm, the thing which is that there's this underground, there's got to be a realm of existence which cannot be ever, touched on or seen.
So basically, to summarize, the totality of the universe is empty. So when we look at this image, the atom model of hydrogen, so we see the nucleus, which is the proton inside of the atom, and we have the electron that is rotating around. And one of the big misconceptions that most of people have is about the scale. So to allow people to understand how this atom really works in reality, we have to change the scale of this atom. So instead of having a nucleus that is a tiny little particle, we're going to increase his size until he reaches the size of a basketball. And we're going to put this basketball at the Sydney Opera, okay, just to help you to visualize the amount of space that is contained into an atom. So if we put this basketball in the Sydney Opera, how far away the electron would actually be in reality? So I'll just let you think a little bit about it, because like the way we've been imagining, like we would believe that the electron would be actually quite close to the atom, to the nucleus, the proton. But the truth is that the electron would actually be 30 kilometers away from the basketball, from the proton. And the electron would be the size of a ping pong ball, roughly. So what does it mean? It actually means that between the electron and the proton, all this distance, the 30 kilometers distance, is nothing. There's absolutely nothing. There's a vacuum space there that is actually filled of nothing. So all the molecules that create your body, all the cells, all the atoms that create your body, all the air that is in the room that you are right now, all the atoms of the house that you're living in, and everything that you're breathing is actually composed of 99.999% of emptiness. It is just pure emptiness. It's just an emptiness that is organized energetically in a specific way to give us the illusion that it is real, give us the illusion of density. So if we look at the proportion of the vacuum, so if we have the basketball and we divided the basketball by the space, the vacuum, the distance that is between the proton and the electron, so a basketball is roughly 30 centimeters diameter, divided by the 30 kilometers of distance, we end up with a ratio of 1 unit of matter, the proton, for 10,000 units of nothing. Okay, it's not complicated to understand. It's a really simple way to understand, but it changed quite a lot of things in our existence. Because if every atom, if every molecule of this creation, of everything that is mainly composed of nothing, they help us to relative a lot of the dramas of the humankind and all the problem, everything that combine and create your existence is actually entirely created by nothing, by emptiness. Okay, and also remember that for this unit of matter, for this proton, if you keep the image of the basketball, inside the proton we have what is called quarks, and those quarks again compose 0.00001% of the space of the nucleus or the proton, which actually means that we have again the same ratio of 99.999% of nothingness inside what seems to look like a solid element, the proton.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
We all have this one life to live. A fleeting shadow amongst all that exists in this vast universe. We have the ability to accomplish anything, truly anything, if we use our time wisely. Is this jar full?
Yes.
And is it full now?
Yes.
And how about now? Is the jar full now?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Now, I want you to recognize that this jar represents your life. Golf balls are the important things, your family, your friends, your health, and your passions. The pebbles are the other important things, your car, your job, your home. The sand is everything else, it's just the small stuff. Now, if you put the sand in the jar first, you won't have room for the pebbles or the golf balls. The same is true in life. If you spend all your energy and your time on the small stuff, you won't have time for all the really important things that matter to you. Pay attention to the things that are critical to your happiness. Take care of the golf balls first, the really important things. Set your priorities, because everything else is, it's just sand. Yes?
Professor, what does the beer represent?
I'm glad you asked. It goes to show that no matter how full your life may seem to be, there's always room for a couple of beers with a friend.
So the vacuum is emptiness. Emptiness is everywhere. Everywhere is everything. So therefore, vacuum is everything in this reality. So by establishing the mental nature of the universe, the principle of mentalism easily explains all of the varied mental and psychic phenomena that occur, such as a large portion of the public attention, and which without such explanation are non-understandable and defy scientific treatment. With the master key in his possession, the student may unlock the many doors of the mental and psychic temple of knowledge and enter the same freely and intelligently. This principle explains the true nature of energy, power, and matter, and why and how all of these are subordinate to the mastery of mind. So what is real?
This isn't real. What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. This is the world that you know. The world as it was at the end of the 20th century. It exists now only as part of a neural interactive simulation that we call the Matrix. You've been living in a dream world, Neo. This is the world as it exists today.
Welcome to the desert of the real.
What is the Matrix? Control. The Matrix is a computer-generated dream world, built to keep us under control in order to change a human being into this.
No. I don't believe it. It's not possible.
I didn't say it would be easy, Neo. I just said it would be the truth.
Stop. Let me out. Let me out. I want.
So this phenomenon is called cognitive dissonance, when someone can't admit truth and has to go through a first phase of denial and many other phases like anger and acceptation until finally realizing that this is the truth. So if reality doesn't exist, then what are we? If our body doesn't exist, then what are we? So we are not a physical body. We are not a brain. We are a mind of infinite energy, and we have the power to transcend the physical world. A common belief today is that we are nothing but a physical body, and our brain generates our field of consciousness. But did you know that the scientific community have absolutely no idea how the mind exists or where the mind is coming from? I'm going to ask you to do something, all of you now. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, all of you. And I'm going to ask you now to imagine a cake in your mind. I'd like you to look at the details of this cake. It could be a birthday cake, it could be a grandma cake. And I want you to remember or visualize the smell of that cake. Imagine what this cake can smell. Now I'd like you to hear a voice in your head, like a question, asking a question in your mind. And it could be a song, it could be a word, it could be anything coming in your mind. And now I'd like you to think about who is the one watching the cake. Who is the one listening to the voice? If an image can happen in your mind, if a sound can happen in your head, then therefore, who is the watcher? Who is the listener? Can you be both? Can you be dual? Who is you? When a thought comes in your mind, are you your thoughts? I'm sure you heard about this sentence, I think so I am. Are you really your thoughts? Because if you are your thoughts, then therefore who is listening to your thoughts? Who is the listener? Who is the watcher? Now open your eyes. So the scientific community has absolutely no idea how the mind exists or how all that operates. They cannot account for our subjectivity or for our inner world, for our ability to experience light and sound, colors and music. What it is to know love and hate, nor our ability to feel or think. All they do is measuring, all they know is witnessing existence without being able to define it or even explain it. So what is matter really? What are we?
Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.
There is no spoon?
Then you'll see that it is not the spoon that bends, it is only yourself.
Our whole reality is only made of energy. And our mind is made of exactly the same energetic substance. So let me repeat this again. The totality of reality, which is, as has been said before, entirely empty, this emptiness can have this appearance of substance and tangibility only because there is energy that's maintaining into one. And therefore, the substance of your mind, which is an intangible element, is made of exactly the same substance. The only difference is that one is structured in a way that gives this appearance of tangibility, physical world, and your mind is a deorganized, non-tangible emptiness. But the substance, the nature of the mind and the nature of reality is exactly the same. So what is the mind if it is not the brain? The mind is a purely energetic structure. It's a mechanical, logical, and rational system. So to help you to visualize this, I'm going to show you a picture. And I'd like you to imagine in this picture, what are the different aspects of your existence? So I'm going to start with the screen. What is the screen? Think about it. Anyone has an idea? Anyone want to share an idea? Yes? No? You can just raise your hand and I can give you the word. Angela, yes?
Silicon?
The screen is?
Silicon.
Silicon.
Yeah, I think so.
In your reality, the screen is silicon. No, sorry. Chloe?
It's your eyes. It's what you're seeing.
Correct. The screen is what you see. So therefore, what the speakers are, Chloe?
I'm sorry, you want me to repeat it?
No, what the speakers are.
Oh, your ears.
Your ears. All right, let's move on. So then what will be the controller? You have an idea?
Am I still guessing?
Yes.
Your brain.
Your brain. Anyone has an idea? Belinda, yeah.
Your touch?
What you
touch.
feel. What you feel.
Feel. Anyone else?
Thoughts.
Who said that?
Jafena.
Jafena. It's close. It's actually indeed your mind. Brain, thoughts, feeling, the interface that connects you to the machine, to the computer, to the game. So therefore, who is this dude here? Anyone has an idea? Who is this guy? Mark?
Is it himself?
How do you define himself?
It's the viewer's perception of himself. It's how he sees himself.
So it's the identity.
Yeah.
The ego. Okay, it's the view of himself. It's not himself. It's the view of himself, indeed. It's the identity. Okay, the identity is the idea of the entity. The idea of the entity. It's not the entity itself, it's the idea of the entity. And so what is the environment in which the identity exists? This is your life. Okay. So if your mind controls your body, then who controls your mind? And that's the body, that's the guy here, that's you. This is the watcher, this is the listener. This is the guy that can decide to take the joystick and play with life. Or it's the watcher that would just watch life and spend his entire existence watching life because he always believed that he was the identity. Okay, how many of us made the mistake to believe that we are what we lived, or the sum of our experience, the sum of our life, of everything that we've been? And how many of us has been trapped into this paradigm to believe that we are nothing more than what we were and what we are today? This is just the program. This is just the vessel. What we are is a spirit controlling a mind. We are not a body. The body is just a character, a vehicle, a vessel. You are not your identity neither. Your identity is the sum of this life, experience, and cultural influence and programmation. Your spirit or soul controls your body. And it control your body through your mind. And this is what allows you to interact in this physical domain of matter. So if you pay attention to this picture, you're going to see that there are two realities connected. This one is a digital reality, electronic, and this one is a spirit, organic reality. And both of them can interact, not a problem. The consciousness, the spirit, can entirely integrate and interact with this reality through the vessel, the body. Like I'm sure you heard about, like, when we send the robots on Mars. The robot on Mars could give us the impression to be on Mars. He was sending us like images and sounds, and we had the impression that we were there. We had the impression that physically we were there. Why? Because that's how this entire reality is constructed. And the connection in between is what? It's the bridge. This is the mind. The mind is the bridge between the organic spiritual existence and the digital physical reality. Why do you think our rulers are called government? Govern the mental, govern the mind. So the material domain is an illusion. behind the scenes exists a domain of mind, immaterial essence and meaning. This domain is referred to as spiritual. We also refer to it as the domain of absolute and fullness, by opposition to the emptiness of this reality. This reality is entirely empty, so therefore there must be another reality that is absolute and full. It's a domain of living, pulsing arithmetic energy, wave patterns that underlies the fabric of reality, just like a computer code underlies the video game. And once we realize where we are, what we are, and why we are here, we will have the power to access this immaterial world of mind. Imagine what we could do in a game if we could access the computer code. I know it's cheating, but like right now, we're trapped into the game. We believe that the game is the reality and we are part of this game. We mix the observer and the character in the game. So let's have a look to what quantum physics has to tell us about this reality.
And here we are, the granddaddy of all quantum weirdness. The infamous double slit experiment. To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they can't each other out. So now there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So when we throw things, that is matter, through slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern. Electrons, tiny bits of matter through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits, and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one, and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. But physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of 2 bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. And it was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange never-world of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing.
All right, I'd like to have a little talk about this topic, just to be sure that everyone understands what it means. So anyone would like to share an idea and explain what is his or her understanding of this experience?
Yeah, can I?
Tamara, yeah.
Yeah.
Experience.
Tamara first and Nick.
It seems to be that...
Yeah, Nick, Tamara first and Nick after.
Sorry, Nick. It seems to be that it doesn't matter what the matter is. Where you're coming from or your perception actually changes it. Hence, if you go the step back, your control over your mind then dictates how matter performs in front of you, if you like. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's your perception. Yes, perfect. Cool. Nick, you want to say something, and Mark after? Nick, you wanted to share something?
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes. Loud and clear.
Right. Well, I mean, as you know, I've been following Nassim for a while, and he's actually explained, he's put an idea forward about the double slit, that like it's not a this or that, but the particle is actually moving through the vacuum, which acts like a fluid. So when, just like if you were to throw a marble across water, it's pushing the vacuum, which is like a fluid. So it's not this or that. This is a bit of new agey stuff that, look, we create the reality by observing, but that's actually a bit of fluff, of a misconception about this. So what he's saying, and it makes real logical sense, that when a particle goes through a slit, because the vacuum is full of energy, it's not empty, it's full of Plancks, which is like infinitely full of energy. So he's saying when a particle pushes through the vacuum, it creates a wave. So it's not this or that, it's this and that. So which makes intuitive sense to me anyway. That's my experience of it.
Yeah. Just on this point, I understand that the vacuum could actually be a fluid. Like this has to be demonstrated again. But what you don't explain is how the mind, by interfering with matter, would actually change the structure of it. Because the question is not that much about the wave function. The question is not about why suddenly, like something that needs to be straight actually oscillate and predict a wave function. The question is about why the fact of observing it is changing the structure of it.
I don't think, well, my experience is that I don't think my observation is changing the structure of it. There's an interaction, there's a co-creation of it.
So if there's a co-creation, there's an interaction, like if you say that you don't think that your mind is interacting and co-creating in the same time. You admit the co-creation. I don't understand it.
Yeah. There's a co-creation. It's not a one or the other. It's both sort of dancing together. So I understand.
So there's an interaction, therefore.
Yes. Of course. I mean, where our consciousness is embedded in the field, so we're not separate from it. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you. Mark, you wanted to share something?
I didn't really want to say something, but I will. I have been an armchair student of quantum physics for a very long time. And I've watched What the Bleep Are We Doing Here about 60 times. And I've come to the conclusion that I don't understand it. And I think that, and you talked about it in some of your earlier slides, there comes a point that I've come to, which is perhaps we can't understand. Perhaps we have to accept that we will never know. I studied Daoism for a very long time, and in the same way that you've mentioned tonight, that the Daoist description is if you could know it, it's not it. It is unknowable. So I think that experiment demonstrates that there's phenomena that's taking place that we simply can't understand. And perhaps it's our separation from the knowledge that means we can't bridge that gap. I'm hoping, I suppose I've always had a little baby hope that we can bridge that gap to the knowing in our consciousness, in our lifetime.
So if you think about what we talked about before, about the mind, the principle of mentalism. The principle of mentalism stands that everything is creation. In creation is a mind experience. The all is a mind experience.
Yeah.
And that reality is actually entirely empty and made of the same nature of your mind. How hard it is to understand that your mind can actually interact with reality and be the reason why suddenly an element will come from a perspective of potential, which is roughly what the wave function is saying, is that there's any potential possible. And even if they send one particle by one particle, the particle will be just going anywhere in exactly the same way as a wave function would. Until you bring the mind to observe reality. And therefore what happened is that the spectrum of choice, the spectrum of potential became two straight lines, just two options. As if there was a densification of the potential of that is. As if there was a space in which there was everything possible until you decide something, until you bring your mind in line with something and you decide to look at something where suddenly elements become real, they become solid, they become densified, they become tangible.
It's interesting because at the same time, although we weren't observing the particle going through the slit, we were measuring what happened to the particle when it went through the slit. So we were still observing the potential after it had happened. But once we started observing in the action, then it changes things. And like I said, for me, it's an example. It is a manifestation of, it's a manifestation that says you cannot understand this.
And you still don't believe today, after everything that we saw, that it could be the manifestation of the interaction of the mind on reality?
Oh, I can, and I totally can accept that, but I don't understand it.
understanding is not necessary. Like the principle of mentalism doesn't have to be understood. The principle of mentalism just stand that reality is a mind experience, that everything that is mind. Doesn't have to be understood, doesn't have to, we don't explain the why, as science never explain any why, they just explain the how, and they give theory about the how. They try to give many reasons about the creation of the universe and everything. All of them has been debunked as false, like the Big Bang Theory and everything.
Exactly. Science has never been true. It's always been debunked. Everything.
It's always about the how, and even the how is not accurate.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to have this little discussion about the place and the positioning of the principles in your understanding of them. Like, do not reject the principle only because you don't understand them.
No, and I don't reject it.
Has to be accepted for what they are, not because you can understand them, but because they are innerly and accurately true.
Yeah, so, which is the point that I said at the beginning that I've come to in my life, which is I have come to accept that I will not understand.
And that's maybe nothing to be understood. Chloe, you want to say something?
Do you think it's possible that instead of it being your mind that is affecting the outcome, it is the interaction? Sort of like if you use a camera as a lens and you record someone and they are aware that they are being recorded, they may act differently, but it's not your will upon that person. It's them comprehending that there's a lens on them, and that is what's affecting that reality.
And this is what they said. Like they said that the electron decided to change the behavior.
Right.
So this is also completely a possibility, yes. It could be the densification, or it could be actually what Nick said. It could be both.
Yeah.
It could be the cell who actually decided or realized that they were observed, and you who decided to observe them, who create the conjunctor, who create this density.
The interaction.
Yeah. But in that case, we'll have to admit that, first of all, the all is mind. Second of all, that each aspect of creation is also mind. Because in that case, those micro cells, those micro electrons also have consciousness. And we have to admit that as well. And as we can define consciousness in another way, that understanding that everything is mind, then therefore consciousness is also mind. Anyone else want to share something? Angela, you look very inspired.
I was thinking, what if the viewer manifests or put the energy as a kind of thought, as the same time is observing, manifesting to a straight line? And what if viewer manifests the interference pattern? Because it's the influence of viewer on outcome, right?
Like the viewer were just observing the reaction. Like the viewer observed that when you're not putting a camera close to the reaction, you always have an interference pattern in the quantum realm, or you always have like two straight lines in the physical realm. So it didn't really predict it, or it didn't really want this to happen. It just happened. That's it.
But who can say the viewer's mind was empty, didn't project anything? Maybe the viewer was
because they did billions and billions of experience the same way from many parts of the world, and it always happened the same way.
Oh, okay, all right. So the same result for every
same way, and yeah, every time the experience has been replicated, it was always happened exactly the same way.
Okay, interesting. What I'm pointing, I think, is a different thing. What I'm pointing, it was like, you know, the viewer could manifest the different outcome.
Yeah, and that's entirely possible, yes.
Yeah.
But if the different viewers are always bringing the same pattern, two options, or each viewers bring or share their own chaos in reality, which is also a possibility.
Yeah.
Or chaos or interference pattern has a meaning and exists as it. But this is, again, like bringing us out of the obvious realization that regardless what option is, we have to admit that this existence is conditioned to the connection between the mind, that is the observer, and the reality. Okay?
Mm.
All right, let's go back. So the old outdated view that reality is composed of matter is crumbling away. This world is now entering into a new era where the people will have the opportunity to finally realize what has been hidden from them by the rulers of this world. Once we will all realize that we are spirit playing the game of life through our mind, a whole new world will open before us. If we think that we are nothing but a physical body, and if we accept that the materialist worldview, we would believe that we are just a collection of lifeless dead atoms without a purpose and destined to decay and die. The law of conservation of energy states that energy can never be created or destroyed. And since we are complete construct of eternal energy, this means that we can never die. Even if your body perish, you will continue because your body is just a shell. And not only this, but your existence is the very essence of that which has meaning. So the notion of meaning is something that is not that much used in our civilization. We're not that much thinking about the notion of meaning and the relationship of the meaning in connection to our mind and our life. Because there's no money to be generated from meaning. Like, we are obsessed by the goal, not that much about the direction of the goal, the long-term view. To think about this, I advise you to watch this anime. It's a Japanese animation, Ghost in the Shell. Recently, we had the adaptation at the cinema with Scarlett Johansson. But I'd still recommend you the original one from 1995, which inspired actually the movie Matrix, Ghost in a Shell. If you want to really starting to think about the relationship between the mind and the body, it's an anime, a futuristic anime that really asks the good question. So the divine gift doesn't come from a higher power. That's Michelangelo's vision of God. But from the realization of the divine nature of our own mind. Why that? What Michelangelo tried to tell us in this picture? You see the shape? He actually hidden the shape of a brain behind God. It's actually a very precise depiction of it. So the divine gift is actually coming from our mind and also from our heart. If you pay attention to the color, and again the shape behind, like if you pay attention to this shape here and there, like the shape of all this, you actually pay attention that Michelangelo was trying to tell us that the divine gift is actually coming from the reconciliation of the brain intelligence and the heart intelligence. Any question? Or can we move into the second principle? All right. So after the principle of mentalism, we're going to see now the principle of correspondence. So the principle of correspondence stands that which is above is like that which is below, and that which is below is like that which is above. The macrocosm, the very large, the totality, and the microcosm, the very small, the individual units which comprise the whole, are reflection of each other. The universe is holographic. It is self-similar across all scales. Okay, so that which is above is like that which is below. The whole point of it is around this word like. Okay, that which is in the very large, in the totality, in the outside, is like that which is in the inside.
The 7 Hermetic Principles. 2. The Principle of Correspondence. As above, so below, as below, so above. The Kabbalion. This principle embodies the truth that there is always a correspondence between the laws and phenomena of the various planes of being and life. The old Hermetic axiom ran in these words: as above, so below, as below, so above. And the grasping of this principle gives one the means of solving many a dark paradox and the hidden secret of nature. There are planes beyond our knowing, but when we apply the principle of correspondence to them, we are able to understand much that would otherwise be unknowable to us. This principle is of universal application and manifestation on the various planes of the material, mental, and spiritual universe. It is a universal law. The ancient Hermeticists considered this principle as one of the most important mental instruments by which man was able to pry aside the obstacles which hid from view the unknown. Its use even tore aside the veil of Isis to the extent that a glimpse of the face of the goddess might be caught. Just as a knowledge of the principles of geometry enables man to measure distant suns and their movements while seated in his observatory, so a knowledge of the principle of correspondence enables man to reason intelligently from the known to the unknown. Studying the monad, he understands the archangel.
So the old Hermetic axiom ran in this word: as above, so below, as below, so above. And the grasping of this principle gives one the means of solving many of dark paradox and hidden secret in nature. They are plain beyond our knowing, but when we apply the principle of correspondence to them, we are able to understand much that would otherwise be unknowable to us. This principle is of universal application and manifestation of the various planes of the material, mental, and spiritual universe. It is the universal law. The brain and mind interact, but they are not the same thing. The brain does not produce the mind. To assume that the mind is caused by the brain due to some physical correlation is to commit the fallacy cum hoc ergo propter hoc. After this, therefore, because of this. It is not because two things have correspondence that it means that one thing caused the other to exist or that they are the same thing. Likewise, just because certain mental states correspond to brain state doesn't mean that the brain and the mind are the same. The mind is composed of infinite arithmetic wave of energy pattern that is structured into perfect and complete unity. The mind as a separate unit links to the brain and uses it as a control mechanism for the physical body. So as above, so below, as within, so without, be a master of the alchemic energy. That which is above is like that which is below. That which is in the north is like that which is in the south. That which is in time is like that which is in space. That which is in the outside is like that which is in the inside. That which is in the known is like that which is in the unknown. That which is over is like that which is under. That which is in the light is like that which is in the darkness. Or that which is in the creator is like that which is in the creation. Who is familiar with the concept of fractals? Most of you, good. Robin? Yep. Okay. So a fractal is a mathematical set that exhibits a repeating pattern displayed at every scale, and is also known as expanding and evolving symmetry. If the replication is exactly the same at every scale, it is called a self-similar pattern. This is the Mandelbrot fractal design. So the Mandelbrot set image may be created by sampling complex numbers and determining for each sample point whether the result of iterating the above function goes to infinity. Mandelbrot discovered that in the early 60s. So the image of the Mandelbrot set exhibits an elaborate and infinitely complicated boundary that reveals progressively ever finer recursive detail at increasing magnification. The style of these repeating details depends on the region of the set being examined. The set boundary also incorporates smaller versions of the main shape. So the fractal property of self-similarity applies to the entire set and not just to its parts. The Mandelbrot set has become popular outside of mathematics, both for its aesthetic appeal and as an example of complex structure arising from the application of simple rules. It is known as the best example of mathematical visualization. So in simple terms, in a finite space, we can actually encode infinite amount of information. And therefore, the outside aspect, we can look tangible and real, can contain the entire aspect of what is. And it can go on and on and on and on and on forever. Now imagine that your mind, when your mind actually goes into reality, can actually densify and structure reality exactly the same way this pattern is revealed the more you look at it. And that infinity can actually be contained into the finite space of your reality. This is a picture of the Mandelbrot set. And this is how nature designed fractals. So in this snowflake, we actually see what? We see an hexagon in the center, which is exactly the representation of the outside hexagon. If we look at each aspect of the snowflake, again, we're going to see a fractal expression of the whole. So that which is below is like that which is above. And as a coincidence, we're going to see exactly the same patterns being formed again and again and again in many, many different types and aspects.
What do snowflakes and cell phones have in common? The answer is never-ending patterns called fractals. Let me draw a snowflake. I'll start with an equilateral triangle. Then I'll draw another equilateral triangle on the middle of each side. I'll pull out the middle and repeat the process, this time with 1, 2, 3, 4 times 3, which is 12 sides. If I do this over and over, the shape will look something like this. This is called a Koch snowflake, and it has a special property. No matter where I look or how much I zoom in, I will see the same pattern over and over. Never-ending patterns like this, that on any scale, on any level of zoom look roughly the same, are called fractals. We can actually draw a Koch snowflake on the computer by having it repeatedly graph a mathematical equation. Each time we add a triangle, one side of the Koch snowflake will turn into 4. After the first repetition, we'll get 3 times 4 to the first, or 12 sides. After the second repetition, we'll get 3 times 4 to the second, or 48 sides. After repetition number n, we'll have 3 times 4 to the n sides. If we do this an infinite number of times, we'll get infinitely many sides, so the perimeter of the Koch snowflake will be infinite. But the area of the Koch snowflake wouldn't be infinite. If I draw a circle with a finite area around the snowflake, it will fit completely inside, no matter how many times we increase the number of sides. So the Koch fractal has an infinite perimeter, but a finite area.
Okay. So fractal expression can also be replicated in many different aspects. It can be a geometrical fractal division, like this circle who become the vesica piscis, and then the seed of life, and the flower of life. Or it can be one cell that's split into 2, split into 4, split into 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, and so on. That which is above is like that which is below. And I like this picture because I actually showed the notion of the like. Like in this, you can see the galaxy and you can see the black outside the galaxy, where in this one, you see the black inside and the galaxy is around. So as I told you, the nuance is about the like. That which is above is like that which is below. It's not exactly the same thing. It's going to be self-similar, like a fractal. That which is above is like that which is below.
In a very simple way, I'm going to show you geometrically that infinities and finite system are actually complementary. If we take the boundary of a circle and we define that as our finite space, now that circle could be a sphere, and we divide that circle so that a triangle is formed in it, an equilateral triangle in this case. Now the universe is polarized. Everything in the universe seems to spin, so spin produces polarity, so we would have a reverse triangle at the same time. As soon as we do this, now we've created a new boundary condition at the next fractal level down, the next iteration down. Now notice that these new boundaries all are centered around a very specific center. That is, each of the boundary defines a very specific structure in space-time, a very specific coordinate in space-time. And so each of the boundary could be defined as a very specific set of information. Now I can continue to divide the space to produce new boundary conditions. Now I've got another iteration down and another set of information. Now I can continue to do this and create new boundaries again. And at this point, you can imagine that if I give this to my computer, it could zoom in, bring it back up, continue to divide the space, zoom in, bring it back up, continue to divide the space, and it could do this to infinity. However, I would never, ever, ever, ever exceed that first boundary I've produced for myself. So here, I've embedded infinite amount of divisions, infinite amount of information within the confine of a finite space. So in very simple terms here, I've shown to you that infinities and finite structures are complementary. That within the confine of what appears to be a finite space can be embedded infinite amount of information. And if this is true, this simple concept could change all of our concepts of physics, including our concepts of our relationship to the universe.
So Nassim Haramein said something very true, even if he said a few mistakes. But indeed, like what the scientific community is just starting to realize was actually known by the ancient civilization for thousands of years. Like this relationship between the inside and the outside was shared through the principle as above, so below, and as below, so above. So it's only now that science is starting to realize that this principle is actually true. And it's not even the whole community that is admitting it. It's only a few researchers like Nassim. So as you can see here, like we have the two pictures. One of them represents the way the energy flow in your brain. Okay, and the other one show you the way the energy flow in the universe. So the energy actually move in the universe, like in your nerving system, exactly the same way and generate exactly the same pattern. Again, as above, so below. That which is above is like that which is below. So here we can see a thunder. Okay, and here we're going to see the Lichtenberg effect. The Lichtenberg figures can be created within solid insulating material, such as acrylic, by injecting them with beams of high-speed electrons from a linear electron beam accelerator. And by sending millions of volts in the acrylic, branching tree and fern-like conductive channel rapidly forms and propagate through the plastic, allowing the trapped charge to suddenly rush out a miniature lightning flash and bang structure. So again, that which is above is like that which is below. And this is the final results that you can find just by sending electricity through plastic. Does it look familiar? This is what happened when you're connecting high voltage into wood. So you use this electricity to burn patterns onto wood. So you need a power source. You can use a microwave transformer, creating high voltage. Then you need a little bit of baking soda and water solution to make the wood conductive. And the reaction is mesmerizing. So by putting baking soda, you are rising the pH and allow the energy to flow naturally in your body. What is happening when you're drinking too much Coca-Cola? You are lowering down the pH in your blood. What happened then? The energy can't flow naturally. The same pattern that you see here has exactly the same shape as your veins. The way the energy flow into your veins is exactly the same way the energy flow in the air, in the wood, or into the acrylic. But guess what? You also look like a tree. As above, so below. The way the energy behave in your blood, the way the energy behave in the air is exactly the same way the energy behave in the plant realm. When you take a little bit of distance and you look at the rivers, guess what? The rivers actually operate exactly the same way. As above, so below. What is this? Those are mountains. It's pictures of mountains, see from above. And you're going to see exactly the same pattern, the same way the energy will move in the mountains is exactly the same way the energy moves into your blood. Even in concrete. I know, it's surprising. So as is the human body, so is the cosmic body. As is the human mind, so is the common mind. As is the macrocosm, so is the macrocosm. As is the atom, so is the universe.
is the essential difference between the world of nature and the world of man? I am part of all this. I am, as it were, one of the cells in this tremendous brain, which I can't understand, because the part cannot comprehend the whole. And yet at the same time, I don't feel, like so many people seem to feel, that I'm a foreigner or a stranger in this world. Its aesthetic forms somehow appeal to me more than most of the aesthetic forms which men have produced. I feel in it in the same way when you see a flower in a field. It's really the whole field that is flowering, because the flower couldn't exist in that particular place without the special surroundings of the field that it has. You only find flowers in surroundings which will support them. So in the same way, you only find human beings on a planet of this kind, with an atmosphere of this kind, with temperature of this kind, supplied by a convenient neighboring star. And so, just as the flower is a flowering of the field, I feel myself as a personing, a manning, peopling the whole universe. In other words, I seem, like everything else, to be a center, a sort of vortex, at which the whole energy of the universe realizes itself, comes alive. A sort of aperture through which the whole universe is conscious of itself.
So as the part can't understand the all, I would say the mind has this ability to maybe not understand, but comprehend, like not standing under the whole, but comprehend, take the whole with you, because you are a part of the all. So the same pattern, the same geometry that exists in the infinitely small, in the geometrical aspect, or in the universe, have the same principles. Brain cell, universe, burst of a cell, death of a star, an eye or a nebula will have the same behavior. The way the spine is designed, the way the brain is designed, the way the brain and the skull are organized, also embed entirely this sacred geometry. The ancient Hermetists considered this principle as one of the most important mental instruments by which man was able to pry aside the obstacle which hid from the view of the unknown. Just as the knowledge of the principle of geometry enables man to measure distant sun and their movements while sitting in his observatory, so a knowledge of the principle of correspondence enables man to reason intelligently from the known to the unknown. Studying the monad, he understands the archangel. We're here to bring humanity to its next level. We are not our body. We are not our identity. We are not our thoughts. We are an eternal mind. It's time to understand. It's time to evolve. It's time to unlock our hidden Do you have any questions?